Caitlin, I want to turn to the biggest story in the US right now. Of course, this horrifying story gripping the nation, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, a man who was detained last night for questioning. He was then released several hours later. Yesterday, we saw the FBI releasing security photos and vision, really eerie, of a potential subject in the investigation. We know authorities are working around the clock, but they've also received thousands of calls with tips, but no answers at this stage, Caitlin.
No, and the story has, of course, been getting wall-to-wall coverage, and it's all over the place. I have been a bit wearied to talk about this because I think the family, of course, is already going through so much,
Mm.
and in an era of social media and clickbait and 24/7 news coverage, it's hard because
Yeah.
some people are unfortunately exploiting her family and their pain and their suffering. What they're already going through is so we can't even imagine, and it's hard to come to terms with what possibly could have happened to her mother and where she is. And there's so many moving parts to this story, but I will say the investigators are looking at things that your average person on social media posting is not looking at, right?
Mm.
We were looking at those images and immediately looking at the man's face, right? Did he have a mustache? What was he wearing? But these investigators that are so trained to look at little things like, is there a limp in his walk, for example? Or how did he move quickly? Is there a scar on his face, on his hand? Right? There's so many little details and nuances. So the social media, of course, everyone's trying to help, and I think that's amazing and beautiful, and shows that we can all come together sometimes. But the experts are working around the clock, as you alluded to, Gab, and I am praying. I know we're all praying,
Mm.
but I think we should be careful not to cause more pain for this poor family that's already suffering.
Oh, absolutely. And we're all hoping for some answers, desperately hoping for some good news. The Epstein files, of course, millions of documents have been released, still millions more being hidden away, but newly
Mhm.
released documents show that Donald Trump called the police in Palm Beach back in 2006. This is according to new documents that reveal a former Palm Beach police chief who investigated Epstein in the mid-2000s told the FBI that Trump picked up the phone and said, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this." Also telling the police to go after Ghislaine Maxwell, describing her as evil. Another bubble has been burst for the Democrats, Caitlin. I mean, it absolutely shatters the Democrats and media's narrative around Trump and Epstein. And plenty of these Democrats and media outlets became so obsessed with the files, not while Joe Biden was in office, but when
Yeah.
Donald Trump was back in power. So, look, what do you make of that development?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. It's the same old narrative that's getting, again, quite old with the American people. And these are the same people that are now screaming from the rooftops to get those documents out there. Let's find out what happened. The same ones that had full control and were in power for 4 years and did nothing about it.
Mm.
So it's like the girl who cried wolf. It's really hard to believe these people want justice for the victims. And I would say this is more about making Donald Trump, Orange Man, the bad guy once again.
And it's
Again,
failed. Yeah.
horrible. Yes, it's
And it doesn't
failing time
work.
and time. The narrative is falling apart, and we will continue to see the media try to push Donald Trump as the center of this story. And that's quite frankly horrible for all of the victims that are suffering and really
Yeah.
truly deserve justice.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Just finally, before I let you go, I want to talk about voter ID. Of course, Democrat politicians are still against voter ID, but here's CNN reporting that voter ID is overwhelmingly popular. Look at this.
Take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country.
There you have it. According to CNN, it's not controversial in this country, but Democrats, they don't seem to want to listen to that.
Yeah, they're calling us racist, right, for wanting voter ID in this country. And we've already all gone through it, right? How often you need to show an ID to I needed to overnight my passport, Gab, from New York to Washington, D.C. today just to be able to get into the government building because I needed a real ID. I
Mm.
needed to show proof of citizenship, who I am. We need that to vote. We need that to buy alcohol. So there shouldn't be a problem with, of course, supporting that we need that to vote. And it's bad when John Fetterman on the Democratic side is actually agreeing with conservatives. He actually came out saying he supports this. So they're calling us racist. Meanwhile, CNN just told us 76% of the Hispanic and Black community, they actually support voter ID. They are looking at us saying, what do you mean? Of course I have an ID. And it's back, right? The whole thing's
Mm.
backwards. There's absolutely nothing racist about this. How many other nations require ID to vote? And meanwhile, we're telling those people, yes, come to America, but you don't need ID here. A lot of backwardsness. But let's listen to John Fetterman. Never thought I'd be saying that.
Absolutely. Final, at least there's one. I wish there was more. Caitlin Sinclair, host of the Caitlin Sinclair Show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.